Okay, hello and welcome everyone. Welcome to JFD Traders Tea Time with me, Darius Anucauskas. Today is the last trading day of this November. So yeah, welcome everyone. Welcome to this Friday's afternoon session where we're going to have a quick look at the markets, a few of the charts, the usual stuff. But before we do that, as always, let's quickly have a read through our risk disclaimers. So, the content we produce does not constitute investment advice or investment recommendation, should not be considered as such, and does not in any way constitute an invitation to acquire any financial instrument or product. As always, a few seconds for you to read the rest, and we can continue. Okay, so also just before we jump into the charts, quick mentioning of our JFD YouTube channel here, to which you can always subscribe to in order not to miss any of our upcoming videos, and of course our JFD Bank website, specifically JFD research page, which we update on a daily basis. So yep, I believe you can find a lot of useful stuff here as well, guys. So feel free to visit us on jfdbank.com. Right, now then, let's jump into the charts. Now, the first one I want to touch on here is the Dow Jones. Now, last time I looked at Dow was about 2 weeks ago, or like a week ago. Basically, the idea was initially that we may see this one dropping a little lower, curving up, and then maybe rebounding from this upside support line and pushing higher. So we managed to get that scenario confirmed. Now let's actually shift this arrow a little bit, and we'll reuse it later on. But for now, looking at the picture and looking at the technical picture here on the 4-hour chart, we can shift this upside line a little bit here to capture these swings right here, so it would be a little bit more clear. And as well, you can see that, yeah, of course, yesterday the market was closed due to Thanksgiving in the US. So today we'll reopen, and looking at the cash index right now, we can see that the index is slightly below the Wednesday's close, and that's roughly, it's balancing roughly around the 28,000 and 100 zone, so 90, maybe just slightly below that. So in a way, still above the upside support line, but we will see a nice opening gap to the downside here. So that's why, guys, for now, be very careful here. The more interesting fact here will be that the index is balancing still above this barrier right here, which is the high of the 19th of November, and it's balancing above this 28,090 zone. So in a way, if it drifts lower below this, then yes, it still has the upside line here from which it could rebound. But if this upside line starts to break, and if we see the price falling below the 21 EMA on the 4-hour chart, now this is where it could become tricky for the buyers, as this could increase the index's chances to drift lower. So in a way, we'll keep an eye on this area of support here, and let me just adjust a few levels here because this hasn't been touched since last time. But if it starts dropping even below the 27,836 mark, now this is where we would probably get a little bit more excited with the downside. Don't get me wrong. We'll still, of course, keep an eye on the psychological 28,000 level, but the only thing is that if we get a break below this upside line, this would automatically place the price below that psychological level of 28,000. Now, something to keep an eye on, something to consider, guys. So that's why keep your eyes on this one, keep your eyes on some of these levels, and let's see how this is going to play out. But for now, we are going to be very careful here. We're neither bullish nor bearish, although I do understand, as basically as long as we remain above this upside line, we should be bullish. But to be honest, given that we all are already quite overextended here to the upside, maybe a bit of correction could be possible. So that's why I'm not excluding the possibility here of seeing some sort of maybe a correction back down and then maybe move higher. So if this upside line holds, yes, that's wonderful. That's good news for the buyers, and we could see something like this happening here. But if this upside line starts breaking and we see a daily close, or actually I wouldn't say a daily close, but we see a nice good close outside of this, or should I say below this upside line, then yes, it increases the chances of a bit of a move lower here to see something like that. But if it suddenly starts dropping below the 27,675 mark, which is the low of the 20th of November, now this is where it could become a little bit more ugly for the bulls here. DXY. DXY is, I looked at this one yesterday, and basically I was telling you guys to keep a close eye on this area and to keep an eye on this barrier near the 98.45 level. So if we get a nice push above this, this increases the chances of a further move higher. So we finally got our break today. If the index remains trading above this 98.45, of course, there's more likelihood that this could, a greater likelihood that this could drift further north. For now, we are slightly more on the positive side. And the dollar is kind of on the stronger side today a little bit, so we could see this one drifting higher. Initially, we will aim for the 98.65 mark, which is the high of the 15th of October, and then we could target the 98.90. But of course, be very careful here in case this suddenly reverses back down and, let's say, closes the day below this level, below the 98.45 mark. Now this is where we could potentially maybe consider a possible correction here lower, potentially leading the index towards this upside support line taken from the low of the 1st of November. This is the kind of the area where the bulls could still jump in, but of course if that gets broken, then I mean we could see some further declines here on DXY. But for now the downside seems to be off the table. Let's see if the bulls can actually maintain this, and let's see if we can actually reach the 98.65 level first, and then the 98.90. If it doesn't happen today, maybe something to consider next week. USDCAD. So now then, we did get some Canadian figures. So I talked about this morning, and basically we got some GDP figures that came. I wouldn't say that they came out bad, but of course the annualized quarter-on-quarter GDP figure came out better than expected. The expectation was at 1.2, but it came out at 1.3%. Of course, that would initially we did get a nice reaction here on the Canadian dollar. The Canadian dollar strengthened after the news, but now you can see that it's kind of fading away, and it's losing all those gains because the previous number was 3.5%. So this is the number that came out. It's still way below the previous number. So that's why there are still concerns, and that's why we are seeing the Canadian dollar weakening, and you can see that now it's pushing above this, above the upper bound of the falling channel, the one that I talked about this morning. And basically what I was saying, that be very careful here, keep an eye on this channel. If we get a break of this upper bound, then yes, it could increase the chances of a further drift higher. The only problem here is that we need to see a push above the 1.3328 zone here, 28-27, before we could get a little bit more comfortable with higher levels. Until then, in a way, it could travel higher. It could fail even to reach this and then reverse and move back down again. Of course, don't get me wrong, as long as we remain above this upside line here, taken from the low of the 29th of October, there is still a good chance for the bulls to kind of step in at some point here and drive this one higher. But if this upside line starts to get broken, then, well, this is where it could turn out to be ugly for USD-CAD, and we could see this one drifting lower. But for now, everything's kind of leaning more towards the positive side. Of course, let's wait for today's close. Let's see how this pair is going to close, and if it's going to close, let's say, outside of this, or should I say above this falling channel, but below the 1.3328 zone, still will remain somewhat neutral here. Just continue and wait. We need to see that confirmation break above the 1.3328 zone in order to examine further moves higher. For now, we're just gonna, like I said, continue observing this one, and we'll see how it's gonna play out. In terms of the downside, as I previously said, we need to see a break of this upside line first before we could consider some moves lower. CAD yen. So CAD yen, this week you can see that it's failing to break above this 82.53 level, this high of the 18th of November. So a very strong area. So last time I looked at this one, basically it was trading still in this pattern here, or should I say between these two lines, between the upside line here, the medium-term upside line taken from the low of the 23rd of August, and still below this downside, short-term downside resistance line taken from the high of the 7th of November. So what I was saying, that in order to consider higher levels, ideally we would need to see a push above the 82.10 zone, and then we could aim for higher levels. It reached one of our targets near the 82.33, but as you can see, it continues to fail to break above it. So in a way, a bit of correction right now could be possible, but if it stays above this level right here, the 82.10, then there is a good possibility for this one to reverse and push higher. Of course, ideally, don't get me wrong, ideally we would like to see a push above the 82.53 zone here and then aim for higher levels, because this way the pair would confirm a higher high, and yep, we could start aiming for these slightly higher levels. But again, for now, we are seeing a bit of correction here. It may drift a little bit lower. If it drops below the 82.10 zone, this is going to be our little neutral territory, because still for us to examine the downside or to get a little bit more comfortable with lower areas, a drop below the this upside, medium-term upside support line, and maybe a drop below the 81.59 zone would be ideal here. But to be honest, this level right here, we will reevaluate it once we see the rate moving closer to this upside line. Maybe we'll lift it a little bit, but again, for now, we're just going to keep it at this point. Like I said, I'll have a look at this pair again soon, especially if this pair decides to drop below the 82.10 mark, because if it's going to travel into this area here, this is where it could start getting more interesting for these sellers. But again, let's not get ahead of ourselves. For now, everything is still kind of leaning more towards the upside. The only thing is that we could be getting a bit of correction first before another leg of buying, especially if it remains above the 82.10 level. Let's keep an eye on this one. A quick mentioning of AUDCHF. So I've removed all the drawings here. Just wanted to kind of do it from scratch here. So basically, of course, after finding good resistance here near the 0.6890 zone, roughly around there, in the beginning of November, the pair drifted lower, drifted all the way here down towards the 0.6678 mark, roughly around there, and now it started climbing again. And looking at this for a 4-hour chart, you can see that the pair is drifting nicely above this short-term tentative, or actually no longer a tentative, but a short-term upside support line taken from the low of the 14th of November. And it is currently above the 200 EMA here on the 4-hour chart. Of course, this is kind of we could consider that as a kind of a bullish indication. The only thing is that ideally, well, we need to see a break first, and a break would be great to see above the 0.6781 level. Now this is, as you can see, it continues to act as a strong area of resistance. So in a way, if we get a break above this, then or even ideally a daily close above this, then yes, we could consider a further move higher. We could in a way start considering the upside if we see a 4-hour candle closing, but again, like I said, we we've seen this happening many times, where the 4-hour candle closes, but then the next one kind of drops and closes below this. So in a way, the day ends up in below the important barrier. So that's why for now, yes, we could start considering higher levels if we see a close of a 4-hour candle above this 0.6781 level, but ideally we would like to see a daily close before we could examine higher areas. Some levels to watch out here near the 0.6821 zone. That's a very good potential area of resistance here, so marked by the high of the 12th of November. If we do see a move towards that area, then we'll take it from there. If the pair starts dropping below this upside line, of course the level to keep an eye on is somewhere around here. Let me just quickly put this on the chart. The 0.6742, 45 maybe mark, roughly around here, guys. So this could be a nice potential area of support. But if that fails to withhold, then well, further declines are possible, and we could start looking at levels that we saw here around the 20th of November, or even going back towards the mid of November, which is the current, or should I say, the lowest point of November, near the 0.6677 mark. But again, that's a bit. That's only if we see a break of this upside line. For now, the price structure is kind of leaning more towards the upside. GBPNZD, also very quick mentioning of this one. I've talked about this one this week, and basically what I was saying, guys, on the 26th of November, I looked at this one, and basically I was telling you guys to keep an eye on this upside support line taken from the low, and let me just show you where it's taken from. It's taken from the low of the 30th of July. There we go. This upside line continues to hold. You can see that we had a nice rebound to the upside. The pair drifted higher, but kind of failed to, let's say, to even close above the 2.016463 mark here, and drifted back down again, almost tested this upside line from which it rebounded, and is kind of right now, to be honest, nowhere. We are going to keep an eye on some of these key potential breakout points. We're not going to do anything here because with the upside, of course, as you can see by the arrow drawn here, ideally we would like to see a push above the 2.0324 mark, but we'll keep an eye on this level right here as well, the 2.0163 zone. If we get a push above this, or even let's say we get a close, maybe if a 4-hour candle would do here as well. So if we do get some like a close here of a 4-hour candle, then we could potentially consider a possible move higher here. But still, we'll be very careful, and we'll have a tight stop loss just in case this suddenly reverses and drops lower. In terms of the downside, a drop below the this level right here, the 1.99, or should I say, even actually say that it's a psychological 2 level. If we see a drop below that, then we'll consider a further move lower, but ideally would like to see a drop below the 1.99 zone in order to aim for lower areas. And the last pair for this session is going to be the euro dollar. The idea here was that given that it broke below the 1.0989, now it increases the chances of a further drift lower. The only thing is that you can see that the bulls are really fighting it hard and trying to push the pair back above this 1.0989 level. So be very careful here, guys. In a way, we could have got ourselves right now here a nice false breakout. So that's why keep your eyes on this one again. This level here, the 1.0989. If we get another drop below this, then in a way we'll consider further move lower towards the 1.0966 or even the 1.0939 zone. If the pair starts drifting back up here and breaks above the 1.1025-26 zone, we will start maybe looking at some higher levels. Ideally, we would like to see a or I shouldn't say ideally, but because ideally for us is the 1.1093 level. This is, but in order to maybe not to miss out on this all this territory, we'll maybe consider higher levels if we get a push above the 1.1043. For now, we're just going to continue observing this one. We're not going to do anything with it, and just keep an eye on the price action. So, okay, guys, I really hope you found it useful. Thank you very much for sticking around. around and watching it till the end. If you want to join me on Monday morning, as always, at my Traders Espresso, that's 7 o'clock GMT time. For now, guys, I hope you have a wonderful evening. I hope you have a wonderful weekend. If you're still trading, be very careful. Don't overtrade. It's Friday, guys. Better leave it for Monday, and enjoy your weekend and relax and chill out and do whatever you can, if you can, of course. If you have to work, well, I mean, we all have to sometimes. So, but anyway, guys, I hope you have a wonderful evening and wonderful weekend, and I'll see you on Monday. Thank you very much, and bye-bye.